When archaeologists first broke the seals on Egypt's ancient tombs, they expected to find gold and glory. Instead, they found scenes so disturbing, they hid the photographs for decades. Pictures of mummies with their faces frozen in a final silent scream, coffins that were splintered from the inside, and warnings carved on walls that promised death to anyone who entered. This isn't the history you learned in school. This is the truth they tried to bury forever. For centuries, ancient Egypt has dazzled the world with towering pyramids, glittering treasures, and the eternal promise of life after death. We imagine golden sarcophagi, majestic pharaohs, and the calm stillness of mummies wrapped for eternity. But what if the truth was far darker than the story carved into textbooks? Behind the sealed doors of Egypt's most sacred tombs lie photographs that were never meant to be seen by the public. Images so haunting that even hardened archaeologists, trained to face the dust of history, went silent when they first looked at them. These forbidden photos don't just show artifacts in stone walls, they whisper of rituals gone wrong, of warnings carved in shadows, and of secrets the ancients tried to bury forever. Tonight we pull back the veil and step into places untouched for thousands of years, where every picture tells a story that chills the soul. When most people think of Egyptian tombs, they picture endless gold and perfect treasures waiting to be displayed in grand museums. The truth is very different. Beyond the polished exhibits lies a hidden world, one that very few outsiders ever glimpse. Early explorers often entered chambers untouched for thousands of years, carrying cameras that captured more than they bargained for. These photographs didn't reveal polished beauty, they revealed silence, decay, and eerie scenes that seemed frozen in time. Imagine stepping into a narrow passageway, torchlight flickering against walls blackened with soot, the air heavy and stale. The photographs taken in those first moments show more than art. They show the unsettling evidence of what happens when a tomb is disturbed. Some chambers appeared as though they were hurriedly sealed, as if someone wanted to keep intruders out or perhaps keep something in. For archaeologists, every picture told a story the world wasn't ready to hear. Treasures gleamed in the dark, yes, but so did broken coffins, scattered bones, and markings no one could explain. And among the earliest forbidden photos, one discovery stunned them most. It wasn't treasure at all, but something that looked like a warning left behind by the ancients. On the walls of Egypt's sacred tombs, the ancients left behind more than colorful murals and symbols of power. Some walls carried words of pure warning. In forbidden photos, inscriptions leap out with startling clarity, as though chiseled yesterday. These were not the peaceful hymns of the afterlife we see in museums, but threats carved deep into stone, curses meant to terrify anyone who dared to enter. One photograph shows an inscription etched above a sealed doorway, a chilling curse that promised death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the pharaoh. At the time, many laughed it off as superstition, a relic of a fearful age. But when members of Howard Carter's team began to suffer strange illnesses, fatal accidents, and sudden misfortune, the tone shifted. Archaeologists quickly realized that these warnings were never meant to be ignored. The photos preserve not just images of hieroglyphs, but the palpable fear etched into every line. Even today, many believe these walls were less about honoring the dead, and more about protecting secrets the living were never meant to see. If curses carved over 3,000 years ago still echo with fear, subscribe now, because what comes next is even more disturbing. The glamour of ancient Egypt often rests on images of golden masks, jeweled coffins, and perfectly preserved mummies. But the forbidden photos hidden in archives tell another story, one that strips away the elegance to reveal the raw, unsettling truth of death and decay. Deep inside the burial chambers, photographers captured scenes that museums rarely share. Some images show mummification chambers not as orderly sanctuaries, but as chaotic, half-finished workshops. Bodies lay wrapped carelessly, with bandages frayed or missing altogether. In one chilling photo, a skeleton lies twisted on a slab as if embalming was abandoned midway. These weren't the ceremonial burials of storybooks, but hurried rituals rushed perhaps by plague, rebellion, or fear. Other photos expose darker scenes, a coffin splintered, the remains inside disfigured beyond recognition. Was it clumsy workmanship or deliberate desecration? One forbidden image appears to show knife marks on the wrappings themselves, suggesting looters or ancient enemies tore through the tomb, leaving scars for modern eyes to witness. For archaeologists expecting majesty, these photos were devastating. They revealed that not every burial was an immortal celebration of life. Some were tragedies, hurried and harsh, where the dead were left in silence and shame. And yet among these disturbing discoveries, one photo stood out, showing evidence of tampering so deliberate, it hinted at a punishment far more sinister than simple grave robbery. Among the most unsettling images locked away in archives are the faces of the dead. We're taught to imagine Egyptian mummies as calm, serene figures wrapped neatly for eternity. But in photo after photo, archaeologists discovered something far more disturbing. Some mummies were found with expressions frozen in anguish, mouths stretched wide, jaws locked open, as if caught in a final scream. One of the most infamous photographs, rarely shown to the public, is that of the so-called screaming mummy. Its face contorted, lips pulled back to reveal clenched teeth. It appeared less like a preserved king and more like a victim of torment. Scholars argued for years, was this the result of natural decay, or evidence of a darker Other photos revealed twisted necks, dislocated jaws and hands bound tight against the body. These were not the peaceful sleepers of eternity. Some experts believe they may have been deliberately displayed this way, as a warning to others, or as part of rituals designed to trap their spirits forever. For visitors expecting regal dignity, these photos were too unsettling to display in glass cases. Museums quietly tucked them away, fearing the public's reaction. But the photos remain, chilling proof that not all Egyptians entered the afterlife with peace. If these haunting expressions already shake you, make sure you're subscribed, because the next forbidden photos reveal not just faces, but the terrifying objects buried beside them. Not every forbidden photo focused on bodies. Some of the most mysterious images show what the ancients chose to bury with their dead objects they believed carried power into the afterlife. While golden masks and dazzling jewelry are proudly displayed in museums, other items captured in photographs were quietly locked away. In several of these hidden images, archaeologists uncovered knives placed beneath wrappings, their blades still sharp after thousands of years. These weren't decorative offerings but practical weapons, perhaps meant to defend the soul in the underworld. Beside them lay strange amulets carved in forms unlike any found elsewhere in Egyptian history, symbols so obscure that scholars still argue about their meaning. One forbidden photo reveals a mask unlike Tutankhamun's shining faceplate. Instead, it is crude, almost terrifying, with hollow eyes and markings resembling scars. To the Egyptians, such masks may have been protective, yet to modern eyes they radiate unease. For archaeologists, these artifacts carried a weight of mystery. Were they sacred or dangerous, protective or cursed? The photos suggest that what the ancients buried was not always meant to be admired, but feared. And as unsettling as these objects were, the rooms they came from were even stranger. Some of the most breathtaking and unnerving photographs are not of artifacts or mummies at all, but of the tomb chambers themselves. These rooms, sealed for thousands of years, were snapshots of a world frozen in its final moment. When archaeologists stepped inside and captured the first images, it felt as if they were intruding on something sacred. One forbidden photo shows clay bowls still arranged neatly on the floor, as though waiting for a meal that never came. Another reveals skeletal remains of workers, abandoned in the very chamber they had sealed, their bones scattered among dust and stone. These images carry a strange silence, as if the room itself was holding its breath. What shocked archaeologists most was how different the chambers could be. Some appeared carefully prepared, walls painted with brilliant hieroglyphs, offerings placed with reverence. Others looked hastily sealed, rough edges showing on stone blocks, broken objects shoved aside as if the burial had been interrupted. Then came the photo that defied explanation. Instead of ordinary stone blocking the entrance, the chamber's doorway appeared sealed with a hardened, melted substance, almost as if it had been burned shut. Scholars debated for decades, was this the result of fire, a strange ritual, or something far less understood? That single image hinted at secrets the Egyptians never intended anyone to uncover. The forbidden photos did not just capture the secrets of the dead, they seemed to take a toll on the living as well. Many of the archaeologists who first entered these tombs, and who dared to document them with cameras, would later pay a heavy price. History remembers the story of Howard Carter's team, who uncovered Tutankhamun's tomb. At first the discovery was hailed as the greatest triumph of archaeology, but within months, members of the team began to suffer strange illnesses, sudden fevers, and inexplicable accidents. Newspapers at the time fueled the legend of the curse of the Pharaohs, suggesting that the ancient warnings etched into stone had finally taken their revenge. Forbidden photographs added fuel to the fire. People whispered that even looking at the images, mummies with screaming faces, objects carved with ominous symbols, was enough to invite misfortune. Though historians insist there are logical explanations, the fear remained. For the archaeologists who carried these cameras into the tombs, the silence that followed was telling. They rarely spoke of what they saw, and when they did, it was in hushed tones, as though the very memory was dangerous to share. The deeper we go, the stranger it gets. Subscribe now, because the next photos don't just question curses, they challenge history itself. As archaeologists dug deeper into Egypt's hidden chambers, some forbidden photographs raised questions that history still struggles to answer. Among the most puzzling were images of carvings so precise they looked as if they were made with tools far more advanced than anything known from the ancient world. Perfectly straight lines, sharp edges, and polished surfaces, details that seemed out of place for a civilization thousands of years old. Other photos captured markings that didn't resemble traditional Egyptian hieroglyphs at all. These strange symbols, scratched into stone or painted faintly on walls, sparked theories ranging from lost languages to foreign visitors who may have entered the tombs long after the pharaohs were buried. Even more unsettling were images of burial sites clearly tampered with centuries before modern discovery. Objects were rearranged, walls resealed, and coffins showed signs of having been opened and closed again. If true, it suggests that long before Western archaeologists, someone else had already broken the silence of these tombs. The contradictions were too large to ignore. These photos didn't just preserve history, they threatened to rewrite. And that brings us to the final set of images, so controversial that for years they were hidden in private archives. Among the last and most closely guarded images are those that archaeologists almost refuse to release. These photos show tombs that looked less like resting places for kings and more like scenes of abandonment and fear. Walls scorched black, ceilings fractured as though something violent had occurred, and strange painted symbols unlike any recorded in Egyptian tradition. One photograph reveals a burial chamber where the sarcophagus was left unfinished, its lid half carved and discarded on the floor. Another shows markings that resemble no known script, looping patterns that some experts claimed were meaningless scribbles, while others whispered they might belong to a lost cult. These photos carried no gold, no treasures, only questions too uncomfortable for official history. For the archaeologists, silence was easier than answers, and so the most forbidden photographs were quietly archived, unseen by the public for decades. Looking at them today, they remind us that ancient Egypt was not just a story of majesty and glory, it was also a civilization filled with fear, secrecy, and mysteries we may never solve. If these hidden photos shook you, imagine how many more secrets remain locked away. Subscribe and join us as we uncover the mysteries history tried to bury.